Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Manitoba Agriculture Crop Talk webinar. If you have any questions today, please type them into the Q&A icon located at the bottom toolbar, and we'll answer them at the end of each presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to the recording. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie. I'd like to welcome everybody to the November 29th edition of CropTalk. And this week, we're going to have Darren Bond come on and talk about our cost of production machinery guide. And this book is something that I think a lot of people grab, whether they grab it at Ag Days or grab it at out of the offices. And it's a real handy book. I know I get a lot of guys calling me pretty much on a yearly basis, what's the prices for this? How do we charge for that? And if you have this book handy, the guys spend a lot of time going through it and trying to get things organized in it. So great opportunity for Darren to come on. The new book is going to be coming out or is available now. And just for Darren to come on today and maybe just go through it and explain a few of the ins and outs of it would be great. So Darren, if you're ready to go, I think let's get right into the presentation on the Farm Machinery Guide.
All right, sounds good. I'm just going to share my screen here. So, Lionel, can you see my screen?
Looks perfect, Darren.
All right, awesome. Pointer here. All right, thanks for having me. Much appreciated. Yes, this is a guide that it is now live on our website. Printed copies will be available come January, so you'll see them at all the major trade shows. And also we'll be distributing them to our service centers. So it's something that you can look forward to. But they are on the website now, and also our calculators are there too. And we're going to go through some of that stuff. So things I want to talk about is some of the updates we made on this guide. So this guide is updated every 2 years. It's quite a large undertaking. We have over 200 pieces of equipment in there. We take this very seriously. We want to put a lot of confidence into this guide, so we do a lot of work to it. And it's our whole team that contributes to this guide. So I'm the lucky guy that gets to present on this, but it's our whole team that contributes a lot to it because it is quite an undertaking. Considering we have over 200 pieces of equipment, we come up with values on each piece of equipment from all the major manufacturers within that. So there's a lot of searches that we do to come up with these values. So we're going to touch on the values and how they've changed, touch on some of the uses for the guides. I'll go through how the costs are determined and the impact of changing those costs. And you're going to hear me say this a number of times. Use your own numbers. Please do this. This guide, and especially the calculator, is a framework for you determining your own numbers with your own pieces of equipment. I wanted to show you how to do that, but also show you some of the surprising effects of changing some of the numbers within the guides. I have some sample rates of some of the most common custom or rental activities that we see in the province, and a little bit of frequently asked questions that we get quite a bit of that I'll answer. So jumping right into it, some updates we made. We had a track tractor section. We've now split it into 2-tracks and 4-track categories. So that's something to reflect because we were noticing some price differences between the two and also some fuel economy differences between the 4-track and the 2-track. So we wanted to separate that out just as there's quite a few manufacturers in both the 2-track and the 4-track categories. We modernized our combine header configurations. So we have ridge drapers, flex augers, and now flex drapers all the way up to 50 feet. So we dropped some of the smaller sizes and then added some of the larger sizes. So that's something that I think will be very useful to producers. Our air drill categories were further clarified. I'll touch on that a little bit more later, but talking about some of the sizes and the common configurations we see within those sizes. We added net wrap to round balers, which really affects the work rates, as people would know, and that changes the rates. So we're not going to touch too much about that today. We're going to focus mainly on the crop side, but the net wrap is a big add to the the machinery guide. And then the last thing we did is we brought current the tractor horsepower requirements for some of the drawn implements. So think air drills and vertical till implements, things like that. Originally, many years ago, this came from PAMI, Prairie Ag Machinery Institute. We've built on this. We found that the engineers were maybe underselling some of the, or maybe not underselling. Farmers were using more horsepower on some of these drawn implements than what the ag engineers were suggesting. So we wanted to reflect what was going on in the countryside. So in certain things, we bumped up the tractor horsepower requirements. That has an effect on the rates because, again, the larger the tractor, generally the more expensive it is. But we wanted to be reflective of what was going on in the countryside. So let's talk about the values. So again, keep in mind, this is from the last time we did this was 2 years ago. So these aren't annual increases. These are over the last 2 years. And there's some surprising numbers here. Now, I don't know how many more times I can hear supply chain issues or the COVID related or things like that when we talk about some of these changes to values and everything like that. But, you know, unfortunately, there were disruptions with production, and that, you know, not only put pressures on new equipment, it also, you know, put upward pressure on used equipment too, just because there was a little bit less equipment to go around. But we've seen some pretty significant changes. I've been doing this for quite a few years now, and generally speaking, we would see 2 to 5% increases per year. So that would be a 4 to 10% increase over the 2 year span for between when we do guides. So obviously, we've really eclipsed this. So front wheel assist tractors in the medium category, you know, around the 200 horse, you know, up, you know, with roughly a third. Large 4-wheel drive tractors and class 9 combines up over 25%. Flex auger header. I was actually surprised by this one. I thought it would be up more. There was a little bit of a header shortage going on, and one of the things that we've seen some of the prices used to be before, you know, all these interruptions. There used to be MSRP and then a discount off of it. We heard many stories about headers going for MSRP and no discounts. So, you know, I thought this one would be higher, but I think maybe also our last guide was maybe starting to catch some of the appreciation in these headers. So, you know, that may be the case too. The other surprise I seen was the air drill category. We've really seen a jump in the air drills. I wouldn't say that this is solely due to the price going up. I would say this is a large part on how we've priced these drills to, again, be reflective of what's going on in the countryside. And mainly, I'm going to point to the tanks, the air tanks, and how big they've gotten. Now we're seeing, you know, air tanks, you know, well over 1,000 bushels, and I do believe the large air drills were priced with like 850 bushel carts, and it might even be larger depending on the manufacturer and what their offerings are and stuff like that. But, you know, you think about those size of carts, and then you need such big undercarriage and wheels, and you need, you know, flotation options. You need 2 fans, dual chute, because the large air drills we have row banding, so a separate fertilizer placement with those. So, you know, 2 fans, all the tubing, you know, everything, all the electronics that go with it. So, you know, it just goes adds and adds and adds and adds. And so I think what we're seeing with that is not only have the drill prices gone up, obviously, but we've also are getting these carts to be so much bigger as well as compared to how we've been pricing these things in the past. But, you know, these things are wildly, you know, wildly dependent on everyone's situation. Take a combine, for example. You know, a track option is, you know, 100 grand, you know, maybe a bit more. And then, you know, if you got to add the rear wheel assist and, you know, with some configurations, you don't get a choice of what you need to add. You say, oh, I want tracks, you got to add on all these other things. You know, these options on these pieces of equipment can, you know, just go through the roof. You know, take sprayers. We've priced these sprayers without the optical cameras. So the ones that can, see the green, or, those types of new technologies are out there. Those technologies are, $100,000 a sprayer, depending on what color you're buying. So we haven't priced some of those higher end options in. We try to price these as a middle of the road standard configuration. So not option less, but with the most common used options, but not option to the hilt either. So you'll see that in some of the prices. I'm sure some of the prices people say, whoa, that's really low from what I've seen out in the countryside, or you might say it's high, but again, it depends what you're specking out. So that's why, again, you're going to hear me say, use your own numbers. They're always the best. So some uses for the guide. We really see the top two bullet points, neighbor to neighbor. So you know what, you're going to help out the neighbor. He's, got a couple more days of done combining. So you're going to go and help them. You want to charge a fair rate, because obviously it costs money to run this equipment, but you're not there to make money. That's not your primary motive. So it works really good for those neighbor to neighbor situations. Also the family end of season, I call it end of season equipment reconciling, where say Lionel and I farm together. He has the drill, I have the combine, yet he seeds my acres and I combine his acres, and we work together as a unit. But we acknowledge that what we have invested in the equipment is at different dollar values. So we sit down at the end of the year and say, okay, you've seeded this much, I've harvested this much, and we'll charge this for each of it. And then, oh, you know what, Lionel, because you have more invested in the seeding equipment, I have to write you a check at the end of the year to square the books, so to speak. So in those first two situations, I really think this guide is very valuable. It's unbiased. We're not here to sell a pitch or anything like that. This is unbiased, and again, that people can see how much confidence is in this guide when we start going through it, and the amount of work that we've put into this. It's not intended to be used for companies that rent equipment or do custom farming as a business. So that's something that I really want to point out, because at the end of the day, this is a cost basis calculation. So this is not a market survey. This is not something that talks about profitability or anything like that. This is just saying that this type of equipment under these types of assumptions will come out to a costing of this much per hour, this much per acre, this much per bale. Nothing more, nothing less. So that's something I really wanted to stress on this. So that's why, again, those top two situations, that's where this guide really shines. So how are our costs determined? Well, obviously we have a cost of ownership, equipment values, and see, a few equipment values and, how big they've gotten. And the depreciation that goes along with that is big. One note on depreciation, this is real world depreciation. I'm not talking about accountants depreciation or anything like that, because often they have accelerated depreciation rates. We're talking about real world depreciation. Financing costs with the rising interest rates that we have, coupled with how much this equipment costs, it's considerable. We also include insurance and housing in the cost of ownership. We have operating costs, obviously, repair, fuel, labor are big ones. So we have those in there. We have a margin. So again, this is not profit margin. The margin is, we use 15% as a default. I'll explain margin a little bit later. The margin is more of a unforeseen or a miscellaneous cost, if you will. We have it on ownership, repair and maintenance, and then with the custom rates, labor and fuel. Other costs are our work rate and our hours of use, and we'll see that those are two big things when I run through an example here. So let's use an example. I know there's a lot of words and numbers on this. I apologize for this, but I wanted to capture what is a common situation in the province. So we're going to take a Class 8 combine and 35-foot flex auger header. So these numbers are straight out of the guide. They're the defaults. The good thing is, with our calculators, you can change these things and fine tune it to your situation. It's just awesome. So Class 8 combine is $750,000. A 35-foot flex auger head, $80,000. So we have a total equipment value of $830,000. We run the assumption that 50% of it's financed at 8.5%. Again, you can change these to suit your situation. And that means the other 50% is our equity in that combine. We assign an opportunity cost at 1.5%. A couple notes on the 1.5%. I know I've had producers say, well, that's fine, Darren, but you know what? I could take that equity and invest it in a GIC right now and get way more than that. True. But you know what I find in dealing with producers is that it's not as simple as saying, okay, I'm just going to take my equity out of the combine and put it in a GIC. We know that we have to find the combine, and that it's a key integral part to our operation. So we want to assign a token dollar value to it to show people that there is a cost to it, but we want to also keep it reasonable as well. You can change it if you want. If you want it to be 4%, go ahead and change it, and you will see what it does to the equipment costing as well. So we have a repair and maintenance. With this equipment, it's 2.63% of equipment value per year. Now that 2.63%, it will be different for different types of equipment. Obviously, think equipment that has more moving parts is going to have a higher repair rate. More moving parts is a higher repair rate. Less moving parts, so more simple, so cultivator will have a lower repair rate. So there's different for each ones, and again, you can see that in the calculator. With this setup, we have a work rate of 15 acres per hour, and that's 4.5 miles per hour, a 35-foot head. And we use an 80% field efficiency. So that's overlap, turning on the fields, if you're stopped, running, dumping, those types of things. That can all be changed. Note on work rate for some of our other pieces of equipment. Our sprayers, I believe, are at about 64% work rate to represent that there's a lot of filling and travel times and unfolding booms that, when they're running, they're, doing 150 acres an hour or whatever the case may be, but acknowledging that they're not running as much as some other pieces of equipment. And seeders are the other ones that have it lower than 80%. They're at 70%, and that represents filling time, checking time, setting time, those types of things. So again, you can change that to your own situation. This setup, our annual hours of use is 250 hours, and using these numbers above, we come up with a rental rate of $418 per hour, or 28 bucks an acre, and a custom rate, and the custom rate will include fuel, labor, and then the margin on those two of $563 per hour, or $38 per acre. So that's a snapshot of this with the guide. Now let's go. This is the fun part, I think. Well, maybe I wouldn't be the life of very many parties if I say that this is fun, but I like going through and starting to flex these things, and let's start changing these things and see what it does. So while we take 50% of the equipment costs, we're going to knock it down from 830,000 to 415,000. So team new versus team used. So team used is going to say, well, you know what? We've halved our cost, same size equipment, same work rates, because it's same unit, just older. What does that do? Rental rate is now down by half, so just over 200 bucks an hour, or 14 bucks an acre. That's reasonable, obviously. Take half the equipment cost, so the rental rate's half. Custom rate goes down by just over a third, and the reason for that is we still need to put fuel and labor into the combine rate, so those kind of mute out some of those savings. I'm going to flag right away here, and we need to caution. The above numbers don't take into account a higher repair and maintenance cost, and I would even throw in maybe our work rate's not quite as high, because it stands to reason that team used is going to have more repairs because it's an older piece of equipment. Team used is probably going to have a little bit more downtime because, again, it's a used piece of equipment. So we need to factor in for that, and we need to be reasonable for that. So that's something that I haven't done in this because I wanted to just show what the effects of the numbers are. But it's reasonable to say, you know what, we need to include some extra repairs in there. So we might actually see that the rates, might not be as attractive as what you would initially think. And that's why it's important to do these numbers on your own. All right. What happens if we finance 75% of the equipment cost, which is very common for what happens in today's world? We're going to finance 75% with 25% down, which is our equity portion. What does that do? Well, surprisingly, our rental rate only goes up by about 5%. And the custom rate, again, it's muted with the fuel and labor, it goes up by only 3%. I actually thought this would be higher, considering that we're financing so much more and considering the 8.5% interest rate that we're using. But we have to remember that when we look at the lifespan of these, we're looking at a 12-year lifespan on the combine before a major rebuild, a 15-year lifespan before a major rebuild on the header. and we're using that real world depreciation. So we're saying there's a 33% salvage value after the lifespan for that $750,000 piece of equipment. So it's roughly $250,000. That seems reasonable. But when we take this, we're saving a few bucks an acre. That's each acre each year for 12 years. So we can see where savings do add up over time. It doesn't look too much on a 1 hour or 1 acre cost, but when we times that by how many hours we're using it, how many acres we're using it over the lifespan of the equipment, those do add up. So I think I did the math. It's $90,000 over the lifespan of the combine that that extra financing does build into that. So something to play with. It's definitely pretty interesting. What happens if we decrease the interest rate down to 4%? Let's go back to good times and say, okay, we're going to dump the interest rate from 8.5 down to 4%. We're still assuming a 50% financed. Our rental rate goes down by about 8% to $388 per hour, 26 bucks per acre. Custom rate goes down by about 5% to 36 bucks per acre. But we got to remember too is that if we finance more, so if we're back up to 75% financing, that number will go up. And again, remember that this is something that we'll see each year, every year. So the effects, although seem muted on a year-by-year basis, they do add up over time. So so definitely those costs are there. So we can again play around with some of that stuff. Jumping into work rate now. This is something, work rate in hours is really what I wanted to focus on, about how much change we can have. So again, we're going to go back to our original example. The value is 830 grand, but instead of 15 acres per hour, we're going to knock her down to 10 acres per hour. Well, our rental rate's the same because our rates are our per hour dollar rental rate's the same because that's unaffected by work rates, right? Because we're still putting the same amount of hours on. But now the per acre cost has doubled or just over doubled. So what we've seen is that just cutting down that work rate really adds cost when we look at it at a dollars per acre cost. Custom rate, much the same idea. So work rate is huge, and really what I want to use this example to point out is that when we are using the calculator to figure out our own numbers, we have to be very aware that we're accurate on the work rate, right? And that field efficiency. We have to really know is like how many acres per hour we're doing. We're not talking about when things are going great and you're in the middle of the field and you're giving her, and you can use a tractor computer to show you how many acres per hour you're going. Well, that's when the wheels are turning, but how much of the time is spent turning on the headlands? How much of the time is stopped checking equipment, traveling between fields, all these types of things? Those are the unproductive times. So obviously, the more we can get to be productive, the better off we are. But this is really crucial to make sure that we understand, how this impacts our costing. And if we do the annual hours of use, that's crucial too. So again, we're going to go back to that original example. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the annual hours of use in half. So our guide says 250 hours. We're going to say, we're only going to use this for 125 hours. Again, doubling or near doubling of the costs. The rental costs double and 75% increase on the custom rate. We need to get the use out of this equipment to justify these costs, especially with these numbers getting to be so large that if we're not using the equipment, it gets to be very expensive to own it for limited hours of use. So I think this ties into some of the things that we're seeing, some of the uses for this calculator. So jumping into some sample rates, I know I'm flying through things here, but I wanted to make sure that I give enough time for some questions and answers here. But here's some common things we see for rents and custom rates in Manitoba. So if we look at a combine with a header, anywhere from $268 to $764 per hour. Rental or custom rates of 31 to 44 bucks per acre. I know that's a spread, but you got to think of the different sizes of combines, different sizes of headers, different values of combines and headers, and the different work rates, which is, again, as we've just seen, a crucial piece to calculating what these costs are. So that's why we have quite the spread of different costs. And so it's, again, important to use your own numbers. Air drill, rental rate excluding the tractor, 175 to 582 bucks per hour. Custom rate, 28 to 37 dollars. Again, we've seen these drills become so big, so tech heavy, so much costing with all this between, you know, the independent openers and then mid-row banders and, you know, dual delivery fertilizer, twin fans, all the stuff, tank scales, all these things that can really drive the prices up. And again, we've seen tractors become more expensive and be more expensive to run too. So it just adds and adds and adds and adds. Self-propelled sprayers, $10 to $11 per acre for custom rate. That's with water hauling. Again, this is not a custom applicator who makes this their own business. This is a neighbor-to-neighbor or interfamily rates here. It's important to remember the water hauling costs with this. We do have a table in the printed guide about water hauling, and it depends, you know, 5 gallons to 20 gallons, the cost of water. If we boil it down into a per acre basis, gets to be quite significant depending on the parameters. So we need to be aware that we need to account for that. And I you know, heard people using the guide and say, well, it's, you know, $6, $7, $8 per acre, but they don't account for water hauling or their work rates are unreasonable. Land rollers is the last one, $3 to $4 an acre for a rental rate, excluding the tractor, 10 to 11 with the tractor, labor and fuel. So some common rates. And again, these rates are all in the printed guide and they're all preloaded with the rate calculator that you can go and use and play around. So getting near the end of the presentation, only a handful of slides left. What's the term margin that we see used in this guide? It's not profit margin. It's unforeseen. It's miscellaneous expense. It's just a bit of a buffer, if you will, on the rental rates. We use it on the ownership costs and the repair and maintenance costs. For custom rates, we use it on the above plus fuel and labor. So just to be aware that that's in there, that would be in the neighbor to neighbor or family farm member, again, just to have a bit of a cushion in there. It's defaulted to 15% again. You can change that if you want. Can I use this to determine how much it would cost to run my own equipment? And I'll tie this next question, can I use it to help with my equipment purchase decisions? Yes. So you can set that margin to 0 if you're looking at it inward facing calculation to say, okay, how much is this stuff actually costing me? What I'm seeing producers starting to use it for is discussions like, well, if we use it for this amount of hours per year, what's our cost? What's the tipping point between, say, using custom applicator to buying our own? Can we equipment share with a family member, with a neighbor, with whatever the case may be, to help increase the hours of use, drive down the costs, things like that? Is it better to buy new, gently used, well used, you know, whatever the case may be? We can put in all these scenarios and see what our costing are. So I think it's really, really important to do that, especially now that this equipment cost is such a significant part of the farming operation. We need to make sure that we're really spending that money wisely, because equipment is one of the discretion spending things that we can really control on the farm. It gets hard to control how much you spend on seed, you know, maybe if you bulk order, you know, depending on, you know, how you do your ordering, when you buy, you know, seed for chem can impact the price, but really we have only so much movement. We can move those things. Equipment, we have a lot of discretion. So using this calculator to come up with some assistance in coming up with a good decision, I think is just crucial. And last one, can I use my own numbers? Yes, please do use your own numbers. This is a screenshot from the online calculator. So we have an Excel calculator, but we also have an online one. Essentially, it's you can use it on your phone, your tablet, whatever the case may be. So I use this on my phone all the time. It's really quick, really easy. You can see all these numbers that we preloaded. You can change these numbers to, again, suiting your situation. So please do. These numbers do add up over or the numbers at the top do factor into below, but we can change these numbers. We can change the equipment value. We can change the hours of use. Again, you see the optimal life here. You can see how much fuel we're using, repair rates, and then down here, this is our work rate. Very important to make sure that that's accurate. We then get into our implements. We can actually have 3 implements. So think tractor, deep tiller, and hydrous applicator, for example. This one's a combine and a header. Got to make sure we add the header because combine doesn't really do too much without it. We can see the costing on each implement, and then at the bottom of the calculator, we can see the costing for rental costing and then custom rate. So that's really good to be using for our own. There's other things that we can change. There's the length of the loan. I think we use 7 years for a lot of this. You can go to 10, go to 5, see how that affects things. We can change our labor rate. We have it defaulted at 27. You can change it there. We have fuel. I believe it's set at $1.40 for this guide. Again, you can change that. So there's a lot of customization available for this to, again, truly suit this onto your own farm. So Lionel, I know, is kind of machine gunning some of those numbers and everything, but there's just so much in this guide that it's just so much better for someone to search up on a website. Just Google search Manitoba agriculture machinery costs. You'll find it. Check out the calculator. It's really cool and really neat to do what ifs. And yeah, I'm ready for the questions. Bring it on.
Okay, great, Darren. Once again, super presentation. Couple questions. How much on average of machinery is leased and rented compared to ownership?
Oh, good question. So we don't collect stats on that. So this is anecdotal. So just take it for this. I'll tell you what people have told me. There's a little bit more leasing. The accountants will actually tell me there's not equipment purchasing or leasing when it comes down to staying away from taxes, but when it comes down to is it good for your operation or not, there's still costs associated with it. So they don't seem to get too excited about that. They get more excited about how it impacts your taxes. I've heard anywhere from a third leasing to 50% leasing, but that's just what I've heard. Equipment dealers will be able to answer that a little bit better. We're again looking at this from an ownership perspective, right? So again, that's a good point that on the leasing is that you can use this and compare it with leasing and come up with a more educated position. But again, with the size of some of this equipment purchase in terms of dollars, leasing is definitely something that should be considered in this whole big picture.
Okay, and I would expect this answer to be quite a bit, but how much do farmers use this guide?
I think actually quite a bit. I chuckle that when I've stopped by to meet a few farms and they'll be on the workbench. That makes me happy to know that it's being used. The feedback I get from producers is that they like it because it's independent and unbiased. It is a costing mechanism, so this doesn't again look at market rates or anything like that, but allows you to figure out your own cost of production. Some of the producers who aren't as keen to dive into the details grab the book and look at it and say, okay, well, if I'm going to help the neighbor, let's just use this, and they're good with it. Others that are more keen and like to dive in and play with numbers, pick up the calculator and just do a multitude of what ifs and stuff like that. So it is our number one most downloaded resource on the farm management side, ahead of the crops cost of production guide. We continually sell out of it. I'm using air quotations because it is free to the people who use it, but we're always running out of the resource. So there's got to be great demand for it, and it's something that I know when we have it at Egg Days, for example, and this will be at Egg Days. We always have people coming up and asking for a guide and what to talk about and stuff like that. And especially with this guide is the new guide again, because it's every second year. I'm sure that we'll have a lot of conversations over the next little while of this. So it's awesome.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And just one more question for you, Darren. What do you say about older, smaller equipment? Does the guide still reflect when you've got to say a 40-foot air seeder that's only valued now at $30,000 or something like that? Can you use the same guide to help figure out that rental rate?
That's the nice thing about this, and I would point the user to the calculators for that, because then you can go in and you can put in your own dollar amount and your own size and work rates and everything like that. And even if it's just something as simple as changing the, you and actually I'm going to scroll a little bit, so forgive me here. I'm going to go up to here. So you go into the calculator, and this is just a screenshot, but let's say you had a combine. You don't use 750,000. I'm going to use a different example. Say you had $100,000 combine, just put $100,000 in here, and if you had a $25,000 header, $25,000 there, and the numbers will recalculate based on the numbers that you've provided it, and it will come up with a costing. The one caution I will say is that if you're using older equipment, it probably be worth your while to change the annual repair, because the way the annual repair is calculated is that it is the repair rate, so 2.63% times the value of the implement over the hours of use. It comes up with an hourly cost. Here we can see the total cost. In this example, it's $19,725. So what if you have a lower priced piece of equipment? The repair and maintenance is going to be lower, because that's just how the calculation works. So I would say for that, the person asking that question, great question. Just maybe up your repair rate or your repair bill a little bit to reflect the higher costs that you may see, because I don't think in the older equipment that the repair rate really holds as well. So if you might want to put that number to $5,000 or $10,000 annual repair on that drill, or like a combine would be a good example. It'd be good to use that, and then you can actually come up with a pretty good number. So I think the calculator holds well for older equipment. Just make sure you change the value, change that repair amount, and you'll come up with a pretty good number.
Yes, no, great comments, Darren. Just I got another one just coming in here.
Yeah, keep it coming.
I just we're kind of pressed for time because we got to shut it down at 1:45. A lot of comments coming about really good presentation, and so anyways, I'm just going to Darren's information was up there, so if you've got some other questions or comments, please get a hold of Darren. I'll get Lori to send out his contact information when she sends out the recorded webinar as well. So I'm going to just go through a couple more slides here. Want to mention that the Manitoba Beef and Forage Conference is coming up December 12th and 13th, Victoria and Brandon. There's if you're wanting to go, there's pre-registration. So there's the information there to go on to that. Agronomist Conference, December 13th and 14th. I've talked to quite a few people that are already registering for this. So if you're interested in going to this agronomist conference, you can attend live or you can attend virtually. So definitely check into that if you're interested in that. The soil fertility refresher course, John Hurd and Marla and Don Flayton are going to be doing a thing at the university at the research farm. There's Marla's contact information. You need to pre-register for this one. There's going to be really good soil credits for this one. And also you need to pre-register because they're only accepting 40 people there. There's going to be soil fertility workshops happening in Selkirk and Brandon. This is already in the new year. So just a heads up that that'll be coming. So this one is more keyed towards producers. And the one I mentioned before is more keyed towards agronomists. So kind of if you can select which one you feel you'd be more interested in going into. Ag Days, January 16th, 17th, and 18th. Tickets are available. If you're watching it on Twitter, they're updating constantly on Twitter, things that are going to be happening. CropTalk is going to be there again this year. We're going to be on Tuesday, the January 16th time slot at 9:30 in the morning at the Myers North Penny Theater. We're going to have some members of the crop scouting panel there, as well as our producer slash agronomist there as well. And so if you've got questions that you're going to be wanting to ask the panel, make sure you're there. Or if you want to send it to me ahead of time, please feel free to do that. Crop Connect, this is into February already. Another good event coming up. Environmental farm plan, we're seeing a lot of stuff happening now where the watersheds are having meetings. And if you're wanting to work with them on projects on your farm, you need to have your environmental farm plan. So if you don't have yours yet, or if you need to update yours, it's online, it's straightforward and fairly easy to do. Hay listing, we're still, if you've got hay for sale, the 2 numbers there, give them a call. We can get your hay listed there and make it easier for you to market it. We do see a few bales moving around on the road, so there are producers looking for hay, or if you've got hay for sale, put them up there and they'll help you market it. Our crop extension specialists, production specialists, their names and contact information are here. Got any questions of what's going on, meetings coming up, wanting to attend meetings, these guys will have a lot of that kind of information available for you to make it easier in case you're having problems finding the right ones to go to, or if you've got questions for this coming up growing season, definitely give them a call. The livestock people, they're busy doing a lot of ration balancing now. They've been doing some courses regarding cow bites. I think Andrew is doing another one coming up here shortly. If you're interested in that program, definitely give her a call. Also, if you've got some questions regarding doing ration balancing on your farm, contact any one of these people, and they can give you a hand getting that done. MESC service centers, there's their locations and the numbers. Harvest production reports, deadline is the end of the month here, so approaching fast. And mine and Lori's contact information. Join us next Crop Talk will be on December 13th, and that'll be the last one for the year. So thanks for attending today. Thanks, Darren, for doing a great presentation. And we'll see you on December 13th. Thanks.